Today I'm showcasing Cantonese food and I'll be visiting a place called Noodle King. Despite their name, they actually serve a broad range of Cantonese items. However, I'll be focusing on a few home-style dishes, food that you would just seemingly make at home. So come along, I should be tapping into some food memories on today's episode. At Cantonese restaurants, you can often order something where the selection is already served atop the rice. And I'm going to begin with two selections just like that. The first of which is a classic. It's beef and tomato on rice. So basically what it is beef stir-fried with wedges of tomato. It usually is served with a gravy or a sauce that is made with oyster sauce. And yes, I grew up eating this, and I haven't had it in a while. So let me dig in. Oh yeah. Okay, first of all, the one thing that I noticed right away is that sauce. It's very tomatoey, and I think it's bolstered by ketchup. You know, it's not just the tomatoes themselves that are flavoring the sauce. And I like the fact that the tomatoes cut into wedges aren't cooked to death. They retain a little bit of bodily integrity while not being too raw. Yeah, these tomatoes are nice. They're firm and, but they're soft as well. So they're just cooked to perfection. As for the beef itself, it's very tender. And Cantonese restaurants usually do a very good job in tenderizing their meats, because of a process called velveting. Cantonese restaurants velvet their meats, which takes the meat through a process of marination and tenderization using baking soda. And also, in this particular version of beef and tomatoes, there's a good amount of ginger in here too. It kind of complements and kind of gives the dish a greater complexity beyond the kind of oyster sauce based sauce and gravy that's on top of the tomatoes and beef. Okay, another dish where the contents is served atop rice is this. It's egg and shrimp on rice, but it's minced eggs and it's kind of streaky. The egg, I think, is cracked into a cornstarch slurry. So you have a kind of light colored gravy that's made from cornstarch and eggs. And then that's kind of dumped together with shrimp. And there's peas and carrots in here with ginger. This is also a very homey dish, one that I ate also growing up. Let me get one of the shrimp. Oh yeah. Wow, this is a dish I haven't had in a long time, and wow, just the first few bites is bringing back some memories here. It's very simple. It's shrimpy flavor, the natural shrimp flavor with a touch of saltiness, and the gravy doesn't have a particularly robust flavor. You know, I can see how somebody might be disappointed with this dish because the flavors aren't particularly robust or complex. You know, it's savory with a kind of gentle saltiness. That's the overall, impression of this dish. But for someone like me who grew up with cornstarch gravies and minimally seasoned shrimp. It's something something very home style. This really hits the spot because it taps into my childhood food memories, and it is doing so right now. Yeah. Okay, this next dish, this one is beef brisket braised with bean curd stalks, otherwise known as bean curd sheets. It's called phu juk in Cantonese. So the phu juk, or the dried bean curd sheets or bean curd stalks, you buy them dry and they're hard. They're very stiff and you have to soak them to soften them prior to cooking. And they look like sticks, really. And once they have been properly soaked, they soften up, and then you can braise them or stir fry them and use them for various preparations. It's commonly served with braised beef brisket, which is what I have now. Let me start off with the phu juk. Oh. Yeah. That's a very familiar taste, a very familiar item, because I ate these dried bean curd sheets a lot, and so I'm very familiar with the taste and the texture of these things. Yeah. So these have been properly soaked. They're firm and soft, so you have that paradoxical textural characteristic going on. Yeah, you want it to be chewy because that's part of the pleasure of eating it. You don't want to be too overly soft, and that's what these are. These are nice and firm still, so they're really pleasing texturally anyway. In terms of the flavor, it's mostly a textural experience. It's really soaking up the flavor of the sauce, which I believe is also, oyster sauce based. And you have a fair degree of beefiness from the inclusion of the brisket chunks. And in fact, let me get a piece of brisket. Oh yeah. Oh. If you don't cook beef brisket properly, it will be tough. But they nailed it. This is very tender brisket, and I can taste the seasoning that was used in the braising process, and that is star anise. You can really taste that flavor in the meat. And there isn't a whole lot of tendons in here, but here is one of the few pieces. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was the biggest piece of tendon, I think, in the whole box. And it's very tender, very soft and gelatinous. They nail that. I mean, because if you don't cook tendon properly, tendon will be very tough. So it's a time-consuming dish. This is a treat to get this, the brisket with the dried bean curd stalks. But this next dish is something, yes, that you would definitely make at home. And in fact, I had it at home quite frequently, and I still make it today. And so yes, here it is, the next dish. It's steamed pork loaf with salty fish. In Cantonese, it's called jing yok bang, or simply yok bang. Jing meaning steamed, so the shorthand is simply yok bang. And this is a dish that I'm really confident in saying, if you are from a Cantonese background, how could you not have eaten this? And it's very, very much a home-based dish. Very few restaurants actually serve it because it has such a reputation as being a dish that you eat at home. Why would you go to a restaurant and eat it? Oh man. That's a very familiar flavor. Oh man. Oh man. Back in the day, to make this dish, you would buy whole pieces of pork. Your mom or your grandmom or your aunt, in my case, my mom, she would get, 2 cleavers, or 1 cleaver or 2 cleavers, and chop away at the pieces of pork to mince it, to make ground pork out of it. Today you can just simply buy ground pork, but back in the day you had to make your own ground pork, and then you would season it appropriately, and yes, using liberal amounts of ginger. You would steam it, and if you wanted the salty fish added to it, you don't have to have salty fish, but it's commonly added. You would literally lay slabs and pieces of salty fish atop the raw pork before steaming it, and so as it's steaming, the salty fish flavor will leach into the pork meat. What they've done at Noodle King is cut up the salted fish and integrated it into the ground pork mixture and steamed it into the meat, literally. So the salted fish flavor is in the meat. As for the flavor of the pork, you can taste the pork flavor, and it's very balanced. It's like 50-50 at this point, 50% pork flavor and 50% the salted fish flavor. So it's very nice. It's interesting too that as I'm examining it, I really have to look very carefully to identify, the salty fish pieces. If it weren't for, a kind of vague silvery kind of glitter in some of the pieces of the fish that kind of catches my eye, something that kind of sparkles with a kind of silvery gray color, I wouldn't even notice that the fish was in the ground meat. It's so well incorporated, but there is no denying the flavor when you're eating it. There is definitely salted fish in here. Yeah. And sometimes when you steam this pork, if you're not doing it right, the pork can solidify and get kind of hard and tough, but it's still very tender after it's being steamed. So this is a very good version of the pork loaf. Oh man. Yeah, and the steamed pork loaf with salted fish isn't going to win any awards for being the most beautiful, aesthetically pleasing dish. It's a very homely looking thing. It really is, but it is a taste of home. It is a taste of childhood. There is no getting around that. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it a lot. I had a good time eating that Homestyle food, and I'll catch you next time on my next food adventure. Take care. Bye-bye.